And when it came to the house meetings, I'd just lie my way through it and say, oh, I haven't seen him in a couple weeks. Well, after 6 weeks of saying that same thing, the house manager said, I called your sponsor and he hasn't seen you in 8 weeks. And I said, well, that's a couple. And he said, why don't you pack your stuff and get out of here? And I blew up. I was so upset because I didn't know what I was going to do. I was so scared. I mean, here I was 6 months into this, threatened with the idea of having to come back home.
Recover now, let your voice ring clear. Together we stand, no more hiding in fear. With every success, our stories ignite. We celebrate life, we're ready to fight. Ready to fight. Oh, ready to fight. Let the world witness what we found. In recovery's light, we'll always be proud. Let the world witness what we found. In recovery's light, we'll always be proud.
Sitting in that jail cell, and that heavy steel door slammed, cutting me off from all the hopes and dreams that I had for my life. Yet it was in these moments, where self-reflection mixed with regret, that I began to see the possibilities that lay ahead. Possibilities that never before seemed so quite out of reach, yet something inside told me I must keep going. I'm Mike Paddleford, and my story isn't that unique. It echoes the struggles of many who have grappled with addiction and the seemingly insurmountable barriers to recovery. Yet it also echoes a capacity for change and the transformative power of hope. On November 3rd, 2018, I made the decision that this is going to be my recovery journey. That one decision demonstrated the power that one choice can have over our lives and the lives of those around us. That one decision showed me how normal it is for all of us to struggle with something in our lives. That one decision provided me with so much hope for living a better tomorrow that I'm excited to share with the world. Recover loud, everyone.
I don't know if it's fortunate or unfortunately enough. Like I said, my wife at the time also entered recovery. She was living within an hour of where I was in an apartment she had just gotten. And legally, I wasn't supposed to see her. But she said, I don't want you to be homeless. Come stay with me. Well, we were still 4 hours away from anybody we knew, really. So I thought it'd be okay. 3 months later, cops knocked at the door at midnight. They saw my car outside, knew I wasn't supposed to be there. I got arrested. So 3 months seemed like a pattern. But the other pattern was I wasn't doing what I had to do. So I realized it was on me. So at that point, after I got out of jail, thankfully I was working full-time in construction. And one of my coworkers bailed me out. And I realized after 2 nights of staying at his place that it wasn't a good idea. So I decided to live in my car. I didn't want to come home to Aroostook County and end up doing the same things again. And I didn't have the money to just go get a place of my own. So I spent my time after work. I would drive up and down the interstate, visit different areas. I'd go to Massachusetts, find a different parking lot to sleep in. Walmart's, rest areas, anything. But I would hit meetings wherever I went, and I'd sit in the car by myself at night and I would just reflect on the day. Were there conversations where I could have done things or said things a little better? Could I explain myself better? Or not explain, because we don't explain, right? But, could I have gotten my message across a little better? So, that time of reflection while still going to the meetings, that was so helpful. That really was the turning point, because I learned, all these things didn't work out because I wasn't letting it work out for myself, and it's really been a blessing ever since. I was nine or almost 10 months living in my car, being stubborn, I guess, but doing what I had to do, and really getting that experience and putting it to use.
You needed to punish yourself a little bit more, you know, for whatever reason, you were experiencing some benefit from living that way, you know. And
Yeah, exactly.
it's that humility piece. I mean, really, it's hard not to feel humble when you're living homeless in your car, you know.
Yeah.
So you might not have realized at the time that's what you were doing, or maybe you were like force feeding humility to yourself, you know.
I realized I was actually, appreciating all the good things in life too. I mean, I was working full time, making decent money in construction. So I wasn't broke at the end of the week.
Right.
But I couldn't afford to save money. You know what I mean? And I could afford a hotel room 3 nights a week. I'd either do 2 nights in a row and save another night for, a few days later, or I'd go every other night, but I bought myself a hot plate, a toaster oven, a toaster, all these things that I could make that hotel room feel like home for 24 hours,
Oh, yeah.
And I'd always cook myself some, a nice meal, ham, steak, potatoes, things like that, just to make, have those comforting foods, even though I knew I was homeless, living alone, had no one around to help. My kids didn't really like to see me suffer like that, but I wouldn't allow them to waste their money. In the beginning, they tried to pay for hotel rooms, and I said, that's going to help tonight, but it doesn't contribute to the long term. So save your money, let me do this, and I'll get through. Yeah,
and that whole idea was birthed out of humility, like you finally realizing that you could not go back to what you used to do. Like your way did not work. Right. This might seem like crazy, but I feel like I'm better off staying here and living in my car than going back to a home where I'm just probably going to fall into the same old patterns. It's like,
the level of self-awareness at that point had grown, because like I said, when I was in rehab, when I was in that sober house, I had no clue that I was so fucked up. You know what I mean? It was just, it was, I think I was still in that victim mentality. All these things happened to me. It was in rehab though that I actually found, and accepted my higher power, and learned to start following what I was being shown, and when we're in addiction, we're always talking about we're fighting it, we're gonna beat this, and we had to learn to give up and stop fighting, and then as I was saying before, all of these things that I do today, it seems like the next easiest thing for me to do. Things just come to me. And honestly, because of the way that's happened, I've had to learn to say no. Just because an opportunity is presented to me doesn't mean it's for me. So if I can pass that opportunity to somebody else who needs it, I try to do that as well.
Exactly. Well, you got to know your limits, right? And that's so much of what you're saying. Like that all comes back to that self-awareness piece. It's in the beginning, it's like the hardest part, but also like the greatest gift of recovery. And it takes probably our whole damn lifetime to learn how to find balance with that, self-awareness. Because, it can't be everything for everyone. And I got my own responsibilities, right? And then I got to worry about keeping myself in check, staying on top of my own self, inventory, whatever you want to call it, and like keeping my side of the street clean too,
Exactly.
Life is a lot more than just that. Like when you get early in recovery, it's like so easy to just go balls to the wall with it, and like you neglect every other area of your life because you're so stoked and on fire for the shit. But then you'll like hit a wall and realize like you're kind of fucking up these other things, you know?
Yep.
It's like,
Yeah.
man. Yeah, it's
Well,
like you learn the hard way. I always do. Like that brick wall behind you on your set. You know, I hit my head into that same wall.
Yeah.
And I still do it, you know.
Things have just totally changed. You know, one other thing that I ended up doing since I entered recovery was back in 2020. You know, I started all these things pretty much around the same time. I went back to school. Online, I was taking a criminal justice course, and I graduated with a bachelor's degree last November.
Nice.
Yeah, so you know, it's just all of these things. And you know, before I never had time to attend school, work full time, live my life, have a family, any of that stuff, you know, all at the same time. And then I completed it. All of these things while doing everything else too, you know. So actually I celebrated my 5 years on November 3rd, and then on November 6th is when I graduated college. Within 3 days, you know, I celebrated 5 years and got my degree. 2.5 years ago, I moved back home, finally. So in recovery, we're always learning. You know, things that are good for us and things that aren't. And once we identify something that's not good for us, it just eats at us the longer we go through it. You know what I mean? If we're putting up with it, we're not happy about it. Well, you know, one of those things that I had to realize was my marriage wasn't for me. You know, and so in recovery, my wife was in recovery as well. We realized it wasn't working out. So after almost 25 years of marriage, you know, I left and I moved back home, and she stayed down there. And we got divorced in 2023. The divorce was finalized. So, you know, I've been back here since then, and I took just a normal job. I went to work at a potato French fry factory, working overnights, and I did that so I could focus on school, still make the money I needed to. And I was renting a room from a family friend, you know, very minimal. I had one room. You know, I was actually filming my show in my bedroom. You know, it was making the best of the situation, but it was so hard to live like that at that time. So, you know, all of these things, you know, it's just been a constant. Something's going on, something that could have, you know, is life-changing is happening, you know, every time I turn around. So good, bad, or indifferent, it works out the way it works out. We go through it the way we have to go through it. You know, there's nothing we can do. I ride the wave, you know, and that's one thing that I've tried to tell people. Not everything's going to be great all the time. We're going to experience death. We're going to experience, you know, everything's still going to happen. How do we deal with it today?
It's like I always tell sponsees when they're struggling with something that they just cannot accept, you know, whatever that may be. I always have to remind them, like, over and over and over again, I'm like, feelings are not facts. And, you know, you're putting unrealistic expectations on yourself if you think that you're going to come to an acceptance of this situation right away. It's clearly not what's going to happen. You need to accept that fact and just ride the wave, man. Don't make any permanent decisions based on a temporary situation. Your feelings are going to fade eventually and you're going to be fine again. But do you want to leave a bunch of other shit in the wake of that? Or are you going to get through with some grace, maybe? You know, hopefully you can call me and look, you know, be disheveled and bawling your ass off, and I'm not going to judge you, but you don't need to do that for the whole world to see, because you just get, you know, start lashing out on people and stuff. Nobody wants that. Right.
It gets messy, and you know, that's one of the things that you know, because this whole Recover Loud movement, actually, it's different than the past, right? Everything was anonymous. People didn't want others to know that they were, currently in treatment for their substance use or alcoholism, because there was negative consequences. Today, people are more open about their recovery. People are talking about, shooting up with the water from a puddle, and they're not ashamed of it, and that's a great point. That's a great point to get to. But when you first enter recovery, it might not be the right time. You know what I mean? Because, we overshare, or we share the wrong parts of the story. It sounds like we're talking about this. It was a great experience for us, and we had so much fun when we were using,
glorifying it. Yep.
Yeah, and it might not be the intention, but it might come off that way. So, after a little while in recovery, we learn what's valuable. We learn what parts don't need to be shared, because other people who have been through the same experiences we have, they already know that stuff. The one thing that society doesn't have to know about is what it looks like to be an addict, because they see it everywhere they go. It's on TV, it's in the newspapers, it's on the street corners. How about let's tell them how beautiful our recovery is, Yeah, I was down. I was that person. Won't deny it. But look at me today, and look how I got here. It's really just been a big turnaround in the entire country. I hope it's like this in the rest of the world. I know my show reaches around the world. I know you said this show is listened to in other countries as well. So
yeah, it's crazy. Like 130 something countries, I think, was the last time I checked. I'm like, wow.
I've waited years to be on here, but everything happens at the time it's supposed to. So
Amen. Yeah, totally, man. It's all good, man. I mean, like you said, I think it's if anything, maybe it's a further benefit, because I stay in touch more with the people that I've met and that have inspired me, and lean on them, and like actually like building friendships and relationships with them, because I know that eventually I got to get their ass on the show. So
right. And that just having that connection, Johan Harry, as he mentions, it's connection. That's the opposite of addiction. Staying connected with all these people that we meet. I've met some amazing people in recovery since I've been in recovery. I know recording artists. I know people who do things that I never imagined I'd ever speak to. Opportunities come to me that might not be for me. I pray about it. I say, why is this coming to me right now? What good is it going to do me? And a lot of times the answer is it's not going to do me any good, but I might know somebody who can. But it's funny, because I wasn't even thinking about it until you just brought that up. So going to school for 3 years online, the one constant thing was I was always in school. I always had homework. Every night I had something to do. So when I graduated, I got bored. I was like, what do I do with all this time? I started seeing little videos about micro-learning. So I started studying my editing software that I use for the show. How can I do different things? How can I make it better? How can I produce a better show? So I just started practicing some stuff, because when I first started this, I took a 1-hour class at a local, media center in Portland, and started this show. It wasn't even my intention to start the show. I went there to sell them an idea. I said, hey, you guys should make this show. And the guy stopped me in the middle of the presentation. He said, I don't care what you want to do. Give me $30. I'll teach you how to use a studio. You make your own show.
I love it.
I said, no way. Who the fuck am I to make a TV show? And so I went back home, and I was just thinking about it. I was like, you know what? Maybe I could do a weekly talk show with people in recovery, sharing their stories, sharing their paths. I wonder what that would do. And, after the first episode, it was really kind of cheesy. I filmed I did a Zoom interview with a guy back home at the time. And we did the whole interview, and I looked and I forgot to hit record. So we had to do the whole interview again, and I thought if 50 of my friends watch that and they say, hey, that's pretty cool, then that would be a win.
Oh, dude, huge, right? Like, that would be so cool.
Right. The next day I woke up, there was 500 views on YouTube. I had my emails were full. I had messages from people I'd never heard of. And I said, wow, this is something that I have to keep doing.
Yeah.
So it really just, the same thing, like I was saying with the Facebook group, I started it and it just evolved into what it is today. It's spread around the world. There's, 1,500 members to the group. And the thing is almost every one of those 1,500 people at one time, they've reached out and I've supplied them with something, or they've reached out and said, hey, I run a program. If you need anything from my end, let me know.
Recovery on the Road, you guys listening, and if you search that up, Recovery on the Road is the name of that group.
I became a tourist in my own state. You know what I mean? I couldn't afford to go travel around and go to the beaches and go to the mountains and go to, see all this stuff around Maine. And now I could. So I just wanted to share my pictures and my stories, and, my friends shared it with their friends or shared it with their friends. The first time I got a request to join the group from somebody in Spain, I was like, who the hell do I know in Spain? I didn't know anybody. I didn't know anybody in Spain. But, like I said, they were starving for connection. The world was shut down during the pandemic, and we couldn't go to meetings. Online meetings were picking up. I started running meetings in the group. I started running Narcan trainings in the group. Just whatever I could do, to reach and to make a difference.
So awesome. It starts that way, It's like a simple idea, just trying to provide a space. I know there was a lot of people that wouldn't go to the rogue meetings because we have a very rich recovery community here where there's like so many meetings and so many people, but obviously when the pandemic hit, it was like some people like were anti-computer, so they had to throw these like rogue meetings at their house, campfire meetings, garage meetings, whatever. And but then if you would post a picture online for a certain period of that time, you would get lit up with people tripping about how wrong that is, and you're putting people's lives in jeopardy, and da 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 da. So I was like, for a while I was running some all recovery meetings, which is different than like AA. It's like open. Right. Well, you know what it is because you did the recovery coach class. But it's like based off motivational interviewing. For those of you guys listening, the format is it's all open-ended, and everybody has to participate in the group and interview each other. So it's cool. And a lot of those people that were like, I won't do online meetings, that was who I was doing these for, was because they could come in there and know that they recognized at least most of the faces, and that it was just for people around where I live and stuff. And it was like like you said, the gratitude that I got just from that was like really cool, man. Like I felt good about being able to provide that space. You got to build a community around yourself and then stay in the middle of it, right? Like the best way to build a really big community, a really big network of people, is to go to as much stuff as you can, try as many different avenues and modalities of recovery, different types of meetings, support groups you can, and connect with people everywhere you go. And you just, next thing you know, it's like, it's a total army around you, that really care about where you're at. And you started off that way, just like, I'm getting this, building my network, and that, my friend, will lead to all these other opportunities, as you say, because you never know who's across the table from you, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And I mean, we see it all the time with these, bigger podcasts. There's some big names of people in recovery that go to meetings around the country, so you never know who you're going to run into.
Right.
And I mean, I know people in this state from meetings top to bottom. I've been to meetings here up north. I've been to meetings all the way through the state of Maine. I've been to meetings in Massachusetts, just because that's where I chose to drive that afternoon, thankfully, before I ended up living in my car, I actually got a loan to get a car. I had traded my vehicle before rehab. I had traded it for 2 bags of dope. And then I walked for 6 months, and it was ridiculous, because I thought I'll just buy something for $500 next month. Well, nothing is $500 anymore. It's going to be a running vehicle.
Exactly.
So and who was I kidding? If I was going to spend $500, it was going to be on a couple bundles of dope, and I wasn't worried about driving, because I got used to walking. I got used to asking for help from friends to give me a ride to work or whatever it was. I'd gotten comfortable in the life that I didn't need to get my vehicle at that point. I could just keep staying high. So what you were just saying about building that network, when I was using, how many people I had to build around me to make sure that I didn't go without. You can't just count on one person to provide that substance, because if he's gone, he can't make it, then you got to have somebody else. So doing that same thing in recovery, this meeting has these people that I can talk to, that meeting has those people I can talk to. There were so many options for me to turn to if I couldn't get a hold of the one I needed. It was really just, there was an exercise I did in the rehab that really put it into perspective for me. They called it a step 1 questionnaire, and there was 101 questions, and they weren't yes or no's, they were essay questions, and one part of it was, calculating the cost of my addiction throughout my life. And it includes, insurance costs, vehicles, that you've crashed or whatever. When I decided to move back to Maine from Massachusetts years ago, I totaled 4 vehicles in 3 months. It was ridiculous, and crack at the time just took over. And, so all those things considered, my addiction cost me $1.8 million. And I thought, where the hell could I be if I put that much effort into my recovery? So really, that's what I started doing. I'm hustling for the right things today, and building that network of people who can help me, who can support me, who can bring me to the next level. I think that's what life is really about, making these connections to just level up.
Voices echo in 1,000 ways.